Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I hope you all had a fantastic break and happy New Year 2022. Today's video is going to be about a sim racing title that I've kept a bit of a distance from for some time, and with good reason. AMS2 or Automobilista 2 is a sim racing title that uses the Madness engine from Project Cars 2. And to be honest, having had Project Cars 2, I did expect AMS2 to be very much a clone of the Project Cars simulation environment. But I'm going to say now, how wrong was I? I need to fully explain this to you. Because I'm going to be racing in VR, I thought I'd start the video chatting just so anyone new to the channel gets to know my face, because sitting in a VR headset I could just be just about anyone. But what I am going to do, I'm going to move behind the camera as we look at some footage from AMS2, because some of the things that have absolutely blown me away with AMS2. So with that said, let's jump straight into some footage from the simulator where I can explain why AMS2 is raising the simulation bar. So I needed to get behind the camera so I could sit and think how I could explain the subtle differences in AMS2 that, in my opinion, make this sim really stand out above Project Cars 2, Assetto Corsa and Assetto Corsa Competizione Zone. And when I say stand out, I'm talking about the physics and the driving feeling. Now, all of this driving feeling and perception has been done from within VR. VR gets you as close as is possible to being inside and racing the real car. You really don't have to think about field of view or anything like that that you do on a flat screen monitor or TV, because VR puts you inside the car, and with your depth perception and the 3D stereoscopic view, you've got such a sense of speed and motion of feeling of the car, and your brain tricking you into thinking you're doing things that you're not actually sort of physically doing. I think it gives you a real insight into the sim that you're driving. So I want to start out by saying that AMS2 is not the best simulator. In my opinion, it's more of a work in progress at the moment, although I think it has been released as an official title. I also want to put out there that this is my opinion, and I've not been sponsored or coerced into my findings from racing a lot of different cars in AMS2 recently. So just before we start, a bit of a prologue. So some time ago, James West, aka Gamer Muscle, you all know who he is, you must watch his videos, he got rather excited when AMS2 was first announced. I remember watching one of his videos and he was banging on that Reza, the studio behind the sim, is very, very well respected. I believe they've made some absolutely cracking sim racing titles in the past, and that they promised some very good physics and force feedback. Now, a lot of people out there did not think that this would have been possible because it was using the Madness engine from Project Cars 2, and I always thought, to be honest, Project Cars 2 has had a Marmite following. Now, I've got to admit that I was fearing myself that this would be a Project Cars 2 clone, and I have been very much watching from a distance, and it's got to have been a couple of months ago now. GM put a video out and announcing a major physics update, and it was saying something to do with the diffs had been changing, and since that update the sim had clicked. And not only going off his word, I spent some time reading all the viewers' comments in his video, and the consensus was that the Reza magic had started to take effect, and that this was a sim title that you should really get racing on. So over the Christmas period in the Steam winter sale, I picked up all the DLC for cheap as I'd already bought the sim some time ago. Now my very first experience in AMS2 was in the GT4 cars. I have been racing these a lot in other sims of recent, so I picked my local circuit, Donington Park. I'm very well versed and comfortable with that circuit. I've gone there and watched real GT3 and GT4 cars race around there, walked around the whole circuit and know it very, very well. So not just from a driving perspective, but like viewing the track, knowing where cars seem to go off a lot, knowing what corners cause troubles. So I worked my way through all the GT4 cars. And I'm going to be really honest with you, I was so surprised at how pronounced the differences were between each of the cars. And I think that is even more so than Assetto Corsa Competizione Zone. And of all the cars I tried, the last car that I was going to give a go was the McLaren 720S. And it was bizarre because it struck me how much more it felt like a dressed up road car than a race car. And I really clicked with this car when I was racing it, and I started to lean harder and harder on the tyres. And there was a point where I was just flowing with the car, and I got its lap time down into the 1:37s. And while I was leading and pushing on, I was driving more like I was hot lapping than leading a race. And in the end, something had to give because I was just giving it too much. And I ended up sliding through a corner and I got 2 wheels on the grass. And rather than just riding the edge of the circuit and get it back on, I actually felt like it was dragging me off the track. And then there I was, before I knew it, sliding across the grass until I hit a small patch of tarmac. And the transition in grip was like really, really obvious. It was, again, pronounced obvious, far more than I picked up in other sims. It really stood out to me. And all the time I've been racing these GT4 cars in AMS2 for the first time, I'd really been aware of the feeling of like a tyre on the car more than other sims. And it's that feeling of grip that when it broke away, the car did not suddenly go out of control. And I must admit, most times a slide was initiated that 9 out of 10 times I could catch. I was also aware of the tyres and the braking because this is one of the things that really stood out to me. It's almost as though I could feel the tyres clawing away at the tarmac surface under braking. You can really feel like the tyres snatching. And that's another thing that's really stood out in AMS2. After finishing my first racing session, I sat reflecting that this sim delivered a driving experience that I've not quite experienced before. There was definitely something more to AMS2. And honestly, just for my own sanity, I jumped straight into different GT4 cars in Assetto Corsa Competizione Zone at Donington. So we're talking same cars, same circuit. Now some might say, well, you shouldn't compare sims. But apart from the better soundtrack on ACC, the more cabin and perhaps like track noises from within the car, the experience felt numb, it was wooden, and it was really as though something was missing. All that feeling from the tyres, the feeling for the level of grip under braking, none of it was there. It was missing. And I just thought, really, was there really that difference between the two? So after having this little epiphany with AMS2, Jimmy Broadbent had just released a video saying what he thought his top 5 simulators were. And after watching the video and getting slightly triggered, I threw in one of my own comments. And I was mentioning AMS2. And, you know, while commenting on his video, I was reading comments that other people had put. And I did comment on some other people's comments about AMS2. And it's in one of those comments, someone replied to me and says, actually, they did agree with where I was coming from. But had I tried some of the other cars, because they felt some of the physics on some of like the front wheel drive cars weren't quite right and that. And that's when it dawned on me, I'm basing my assumptions off one racing class. So I've spent a lot of time going through various different cars in rear drive, front wheel drive and all wheel drive variants to get a real good handle on the physics in the sim. So having tried many different cars in the sim, the one resounding theme is the grip level from the tyres and the grip level across different surfaces is outstanding. I also think that the sound from the tyres is one of the most realistic I have heard in a sim thus far, and this goes toward intuitively knowing what the tyre is doing. Now, I have read some people's comments on Race Department that they think AMS2 leans too heavily on the tyre sliding, but I have to slightly disagree and say that the tyre only slides when you're going above the limit of grip, which is done far too easily by high speed corner entry or just simply overdriving the car. Now, something else I wanted to mention because it really stood out to me, and that was a high speed off in a collision with another car, and I was spent careering off across the grass, and I was a complete passenger. Even though my brake pedal was welded to the bulkhead, the momentum was just taking me on a one-way trip to the barrier. And this is indicative to many real life crashes that I've seen at circuits. And it really stood out to me that the speed and the momentum of the car across the grass, they're in other sims. It didn't simulate that very well. It really felt very realistic. So I think the problem with some simulators is that they can have too much grip. And with modern cars and electronics, people forget how easily a car can spin. And I've got to be honest, this is something Reza seemed to capture perfectly. And with some of the lower power cars and lower grip tyres in the simulation, if you ever wanted to teach someone car control, then this is the simulator to do it in. So does this make AMS2 the absolutely best handling simulator on the market? Well, currently I'd still say no, because AMS2 in my opinion is still a work in progress, and there's still a lot of polish needs to be done to certain cars. The AI really need improving. A lot of inconsistencies with the AI over different tracks, as there was with Project Cars 2. There's that annoyance that you can't drive yourself out the pits, it takes over for you. There's a lot of different little things that really still need to be brought together, but AMS2 is shaping up to be the best simulator I have tried thus far. Now, there is iRacing. The cost of that puts me off and has done to this day. And there's also Race Room that I've still not tried or had a go on yet. Maybe I should take a look at that going forward. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I'm just going to hand over back to myself. So now we've gone through some of the things that AMS2 is bringing to its simulator that just aren't there in other sims currently. And it makes me wonder, can other sims, something like Assetto Corsa Competizione, take a look at AMS2 and try and introduce it into their sim? Because competition drives things forward, and this is what we need. We need simulators to be pushing each other forward. Anyway, that is the end of this video. Now it's 2022, I'm going to try and bring more videos each week. It might be a slow progressive start, but I do want to ramp up the content for you guys. And I must quickly thank you for 800 subscribers. We are officially in the 800 mark now. And I really thank everyone who has subscribed and comments on the videos and is helping to promote the channel move forward. Thank you all for watching. I will see you very soon in the next video to come. Peace out.